Hi everyone, welcome to the Tropic Marin channel. Today we're going to do a video again from our research facility here at the ICBM in Wilhelmshaven. Today we're going to do a little bit of gardening because our so-called Atoll tank is getting a bit too crowded. Some of you may have seen the tank in previous videos, so it's kind of like our show tank, not in the sense like you would set up a show tank in your living room, I guess, but more to show also to students. We have a lot of students coming through here, how the corals compete, how they overgrow each other, which organisms then come in the dark. So basically we just let it grow wild, more or less, and every now and then we have to do a little bit of gardening. We started that tank, or we let it just grow from 2016 on, so almost 10 years. There's actually no rocks or very little rocks in the tank, so everything is grown corals, and yeah, everything grows towards the light. And in the dark areas, then you have the organisms that don't need the light, like sponges and tunicates and whatever is living down there. The corals all want to get as close to the sun as possible. Speaking of sun, we also have a pretty intense illumination here with the radions and the daily peak. We let them run almost on full blast. This one here gets about 1500 par, which I know is kind of ridiculous, but it does like it. I wouldn't do it at home just alone for the electricity reasons, but here it's basically an experimental tank. Well, corals grow well, a bit too well almost, because yeah, now the coral water ratio is a bit heavy on the coral side and the flow pumps. So even when they're running, it's very little water movement. So this one needs a bit more, and we already cleared like a nice channel here. We did that in the video for our German friends, and you guys now get to watch the other half of the tank being a bit cleared out. So we have quite a few different corals in here. So this tenuis is actually grown from a single egg. So we have a spawning facility here where we can induce the coral spawning in an ex situ, in an artificial environment. That's a key research area of our work. So we are researching how to optimize that way of producing corals, either for restoration but also for the aquarium trade. And that we do in our spin-off company, the Sci Reef. There's also videos about that. It's also in Wilhelmshaven, different location, and there we're producing these guys basically for you. So hopefully in the not too distant future, meaning end of this year, the first ones will enter the aquarium trade, which is very exciting for us. Aside from the spawned ones, we have Fossilopora growing. There was actually a lot more we just cut out. These are also grown from larvae, and these are brooding corals, meaning they release fully developed coral larvae, which then settle. I guess a lot of you know that phenomenon already from your own tanks, when you have a Fossilopora colony and it's happy, and then suddenly you have the colonies popping up everywhere in the tank. That is basically their mode of reproduction. And it's also a species we work with, and we have quite a few more of these. These are also all grown from larvae, and we use them to harvest coral larvae, and they reproduce not just once a year like the acros, but many times actually. They don't release as many offspring, but enough to do experiments with. So you can do big scale experiments then when the acros are spawning. Aside from these, we have the purple staghorn here that should be Cropra parilis, I think, the Tumida, the so-called Ensman, the red Montipora, which I really like the color contrast between the blue of the tenuis and the red Montipora, but it's getting pretty close to the tenuis, even though it's more aggressive, so it can sting the Montipora and keep it at a distance. It's still closing in too much. We have the Caulastria, which is also a really cool coral. It can grow under really intense light, but on the other hand, there's the ones down here, the holdouts in the dark, that basically get a bit of light when the door of the room is open. So this is what we cut out from here. This is all the Porides, and there is a flow pump actually somewhere down there, but it's not running anymore, and I already cut the cable. This one goes to the coral. Then we have a bit of Gorgonians and some Pavona back here, and our mangrove, which has been in here for 3 years now. Even though it's holding out and it's producing new leaves every now and then, it's not growing as much as it should, because it's fully encased basically in corals, and there's not much roots, I guess, down there. which allows it to take up enough nutrients. But nevertheless, it's still standing strong. Unfortunately, we also have the alga here, macroalga ulva, sea lettuce, which can be quite annoying, especially when it grows in the shallow, and I can't put any fish in that would eat it because the fish can't reach these areas, so yeah, we cut it out by hand. We have here our reef forming, so in nature you would have sand accumulating, and then sooner or later there's a coconut floating along and drifting onto the sand, and then you have your little tropical paradise. We have to resort to a mangrove because a coconut would be a bit too much, I would say. This tank will most likely be taken down not too far into the future, because the whole facility is being downsized and simplified, because now, since we're on our way basically out of the active research field, the facility is supposed to keep on running, but it needs to be simplified. So this whole row is supposed to be removed later this year, and I'm sure we could incorporate that in an entertaining video, potentially, also to see what may live down here in the depth of that one. There's some stenopus shrimp that I put in. I saw exactly 2 times. Once I put it in, and then about 1 year later when it was much bigger, so it seems to be doing fine, but doesn't want to be seen, I guess. So here you can see the little bristle star arms. So there's a lot of bristle stars living in the cracks and crevices in here. Yeah, I like these guys a lot. Bristle stars are cool. All right, well, then let's do some coral cutting. One really useful thing of a tank like this is you can put your boxes and your tools, right? You can just put on the corals. You have an excellent table. We have 1 box with the frags that we'll keep and give another chance, and then 1 box with the stuff that is not going to be used anymore. Oh, now we start to cut out here. Jesus, yeah, that green one always has a really strong skeleton. With the acros, I like to look inside whether there's eggs. In this system, we don't simulate the seasonality. So to get the corals to spawn, you need to simulate the water temperature throughout the year, lunar cycle, and day-length, basically. So we don't do that here. Every day is the same. But still, we had this one produce eggs a few years ago. Corals regularly spawn in normal tanks as well, but you can't predict it, actually. So it just happens randomly, more or less. And you always need 2 colonies to spawn at the same time. Otherwise, you can't fertilize eggs. It's still interesting to see whether it's producing eggs. So whenever you cut acros, I would recommend to have a look inside. Maybe there's a little red surprise waiting. So that's going to release a lot of mucus. The green slimer, as it is called. So the red Montipora, also very fast growing. We'll try to take out without damaging the blue colony. Oh, that looks good. So which box is... I think that one gets another chance. Try to get out this part here. So the tank is also not running just in itself as an individual system, which is kind of obvious. It's integrated into the whole system, and we have about 6,500 liters here in the room. So there's a rather big volume that this tank is connected to, but nevertheless the inflow of water is not super much. Always make sure that they get enough of what they need. So this side looks fairly good, I would say. Take out that chunk. Didn't break any of the blue one. Yeah, I really like that blue turquoise colony. Now that Montipora and acro is so much nicer to cut, so getting through here then was quite some workout. Here on the channel is more videos about the facility we're working in right now, so feel free to check those out. And also about our research projects that we've been doing in the past and that we're still working on. We have a nice conglomerate of different corals. And here in the depth, that's also interesting. And still little Colastria polyp holding out. So if these guys would get more light now, because they were down there in the dark, they would most likely recover and turn into a healthy polyp. I wouldn't put them under the 1500 right away. That's probably too much. Yeah, that tank is also hard to photograph and film because there's really high intensity on the top. There's little light making its way down, so if you take a picture or film it, then either the top looks nice and the sides are completely dark, or when you film here in the dark, it's trickier.
I'm sorry for that.
Okay, that was a good one, I think. This goes there. Yeah, once we're done, we can weigh how much we took out. We know where all the baling solutions are going that we put in here every day. Alright, I think that doesn't look half bad. Bit more space, took out some more of the gorgonians, and now the Tribinaria down here gets a lot more light. Yeah, I think that should do it for a couple months, at least weeks. Probably cutting back again in like 2 months, and then we'll have to see what happens to the tank. But that's a story for another day. I hope you had fun watching a bit of gardening today, a little bit of different topic, and take care, have fun with your corals, and see you next time. Bye bye. Alright, let's see how much coral skeleton and live coral we cut out. First, the stuff that can't be used anymore is a little over 1 kilo. With a bit, and now the ones that get a second chance, and we end up with exactly 1600 grams. I mean, the boxes are like 20 grams each, so yeah, a good 1.5 kilo. So yeah, I think you see a difference in the tank, but I would have guessed it's a bit less than more than 1.5 kilo. Well, that's where all the baling powders go.